Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show. I want to first thank all of you. Thank you for joining us here on intellectualradio.com, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram. Please like and share the program with your social media outlets. We certainly appreciate that support. Of course, this is Monday night, and this is our Monroe Monday. Monroe Anderson, who is a retired journalist, as also he is the former press secretary for the late Mayor Eugene Sawyer, is going to be with me in just a few moments. We're also going to be talking about, as I told you in the promo, that I'm going to be telling you and bringing you information about the data from the city of Chicago on speed cameras. As many of you know, that I have been working on the abolition of photo enforcement of red light cameras and speed cameras here in Chicago for going on 16 years now. And we're going to continue that fight because it is a scourge on the public. It is not a public safety benefit. It is something that benefit the coffers of our government, for which we as citizens and taxpayers get no redeeming value for that. And we need to change. We need to change that. All right. So I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later on in the program. And we're going to be talking about a number of issues. But I also want to talk about how sick Dr. King once spoke about this country, that he was worried about the sick racism and racists and inequality here in Chicago. And I saw this and I thought that I would share it with us. But and each week, what we're going to start doing, starting tonight, we're going to be talking about Garrett Morgan, somebody that you may not know about. You may have, and some of you may have seen it, but we're going to be featuring a Black History moment every Monday night. And tonight is about Garrett Morgan. Take a look at this.
You've used his invention your entire life, but you probably never learned his name. Garrett Morgan was a black inventor born in 1877 to formerly enslaved parents. With just a sixth grade education, he created technologies that still shape the modern world. One of his biggest breakthroughs? The three-position traffic signal. Before his design, there were only stop and go, causing deadly accidents. Morgan added a warning phase. That idea became the model for traffic lights across the globe. And he didn't stop there. He also invented a safety hood, an early gas mask. When an explosion trapped workers under Lake Erie, no one would help. Garrett put on the mask he created and personally saved their lives. But even then, America didn't want to credit a black man. Companies refused to buy from him, so he hired white actors to pose as the inventor during live demos. They tried to erase him. But we're making sure Garrett Morgan's name is remembered just like his impact.
Garrett Morgan, who created the traffic signal. Many of us didn't know anything about, but every Monday night, we're going to be bringing you a clip that reminds of the strength and the power of Black America. All right, we're going to bring my guest on. I think he is here with us now, and we're going to welcome him to the stage. Hey, Monroe, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, Mark. How are you?
Oh man, I'm fantastic. I want to thank.
What do you want to talk about on this Monroe Monday?
Oh, on this Monroe Monday, it's Monroe Monday, so Monroe should be leading the conversation. But there's a couple of things that happened. You know, I was away last week We celebrated the life of my brother, who was my oldest sibling, who made his transition, and so we celebrated him on last week. He was 73 years of age, and I want to thank all of you out there that sent your heartfelt condolences and support to me and my family. And I certainly want to give a big thank you to my good dear friend Pam Morris, who is the gospel sister, who certainly has been sending her prayers and condolences to our family. And so they were very much felt. And I thank everybody for that that support. So, well, Monroe, I didn't think that. I didn't think that the news cycle would surprise me as much, but what Donald Trump does not surprise me. What is surprising me is how every one of what I thought of as one of our means of holding people to check and accountability are seeming to capitulate all the way down to our media.
Yeah, you're talking about all the guardrails that are supposed to be up.
All of the guardrails that were up for every other president that seems to have completely capitulated to this president.
Yeah. Yeah.
How could such an inept, incompetent, unintelligent person have that much intimidation and influence over the media?
Well, you know what he did 8 years ago, and what he's doing now is he overloads the system. He gives you a fire hose full of lies, and he does so many. He says so many things, and now he's doing so many things that the media can't keep up. You know, there's a news cycle that happens, and he overloads the news cycle. So let's say with the jet, which in and of itself should be enough to the gift from the Arabs that he's supposed to turn into Air Force One and then have it for his library later. Um, that story alone, any other, whether it's Biden or Obama, even a Bush, would be enough to ruin a presidency. But before they even get a chance to focus on it, then he has another scandal or another crazy thing. I mean, sometimes it's two or three newsworthy things in a day. So the news media doesn't get a chance to really go into anything he's doing wrong in depth. And of course, the other thing is he's now, because he really is trying to be a dictator. So now he's suing the media if he doesn't like their coverage. You know, and the whole foundation is, I mean, it's built into the Constitution that the media, the word media isn't used, but newspapers, free speech. So you're supposed to be able to report on what's going on and from your perspective. In fact, in the day when the country was new, then those who could afford it, everybody had a press, a newspaper of their own. And so they would make their point. They would print a paper, they would sell it, and it was from whatever perspective they wanted it to be on whatever they wanted it to be about. Now we're sort of back to that day now with podcast and social media. But Trump is trying to dominate it, and in many instances is being successful at that.
Well, Um, it would seem to me that um, it seems to be pretty clear to me that these tactics or these antics that he is using really to divert attention away from what he's really doing behind the scenes. So what he's showing us and having us distracted on these shiny objects,
Right. Right.
um, but there's something really nefarious going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Is what we should be paying more attention to what is happening rather than the shiny object that
Yeah.
is
No, you're
put out
you're
in
right.
front of us.
Yeah, you're right. But this is the problem is that uh, the media in general, not everybody, but in general, goes for the shiny objects. So when Trump does something outrageous, then that's a story to them instead of this behind the scenes, deep into the weeds reporting on all the things that he's doing wrong. And plus, and again, he's doing so many things wrong I mean, he's attacking Harvard, trying to make them behave the way he thinks they should behave, instead of letting them be the educational institution that they've been since long before this country was founded. Even Harvard was Harvard before there was a United States. And so for him to be Johnny come lately and try and tell them what they should be teaching and what they can't teach and who they should be hiring and who they can't hire and what students can come and which students cannot is incredible. Absolutely incredible. But the difference is with Harvard and some of the, because he's using them as an example to all the other institutions, educational institutions, of unless you bend the knee to him, this is what's going to happen to you. But Harvard, as you know, I mean, being a businessman, has a $53 billion endowment, so they got money to spare, uh, so they can afford to fight him.
Yeah, they could afford to fight him. Um, so, um, how do you think that? How long is it going to be before 60 Minutes fires Scott Paley?
Yeah, we'll
They
see.
shouldn't fire. They shouldn't fire
I
him.
know, I know, no,
But
no, 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 no. That no, this is what he's trying. That's another thing he's trying to do is control the legacy media, uh, and dictate who should be there and who shouldn't. For example, I don't know if you watch some of the press conferences he's doing now. He has sympathetic reporters, right wing reporters, asking him the bulk of the questions. And so
right.
instead of them being probing, uh, need to know type questions, they're softballs.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, they have basically brought in the um, those who I don't certainly they're not people that most of us know about. They wouldn't be considered to be the credible um, mainstream news outlets like CBS, NBC, and the Associated Press,
right.
and those um, news outlets that have traditionally kept the president and kept the public aware of what administrations and government is doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it seems like they're doing everything that possible to ensure that whatever it is that they are doing and planning does not get to the public except for what they want to get to the public, which is certainly not what they are planning to do.
Right, right. No, what they're doing. I mean, this is how authoritarians operate. What they try to do is discredit um, all the entities that could be critical to the authoritarian, and they spread disbelief so that his word is the gospel, and anything else is either unavailable or unbelievable to the masses.
Well, you hear, again, I'm not a person who pays a lot of attention to polls, because I think you can, a poll can say whatever that the person who is writing the check for the pollster to poll, they
Yeah,
can say whatever they want it to say. But even if there were polls that we could certainly rely on, what difference does a poll make about his poll numbers, with the exception to his ego? What real difference could that really make, or will it make? Because he is basically a lame duck who cannot run for office again.
well, he's not a lame duck yet, but because normally in the situations with two-term presidents, they get about a year to 2 years
Hmm.
of getting things done because they are in power and they can influence the Congress. Uh, he is, I'm predicting that his days of being a real president are numbered and that he will be a lame duck sooner rather than later because of all the horrendous things he's doing and has done and the terrible people he has in his cabinet doing these things. You know, there's a scandal a day from one of his cabinet, incompetent cabinet members, for example.
Well, this is Project 2025
Right.
in full view.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, they specifically talked about what it was that they were planning to do, and they're carrying it out.
Right. Right.
I mean, on at
Or,
every,
or trying to carry it out in some
or
instances.
certainly trying to
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to, to systemically carry it out as much as possible. Now, much of it is being blocked
By the
because
courts.
he
The courts,
is
they
trying to
only,
govern.
yeah, the courts, fortunately, have stepped up to the plate to take care of things because the Republican Congress is like just um, sheeple.
Yeah, completely compliant to whatever. Now, I heard something today. I was listening to Katie Tur earlier today, and they were talking about how Republicans are not, they're not just afraid of their about their careers, but that they're afraid of their family, for their family being attacked if in fact they show any type of resistance or opposition to uh, Trump's wishes.
Yeah, this is true. You know, and the judges are being threatened as well. But the thing is, the judges have a lot more backbone than the Republican Congress. So they're going by the law and they're sticking with it. Uh, some Republican politicians are like blowing in the wind. Wherever the wind's going, that's the direction they're in. You know, Marco, for example, he is doing a lot of things that are 180 degrees different from what he used to say, the position he used to have.
Yeah, there are many people are asking what happened to Marco Rubio. Where is he? I
Yeah,
mean, there are senators that are saying that I think it's up to 5 or 6 senators that are now saying that they regretted voting for him.
right, right, right. But it's too late now. He's there and he's doing whatever his master wants him to do.
Yeah, it's that's what's astonishing to me is that we have an entire infrastructure that has been brought to its knees based on intimidation,
Yeah. You know,
including our Federal Bureau of Investigations.
right, right. Because look
How
who he
could this
put in.
be?
He put uh, Cash in to run the FBI. And Cash has been a cheerleader for Trump. Remember, he's written some children's books, and in the book, Trump is the king, and I mean, and these are children's books that he's written, and so he puts them in, and Cash says that he was going to close down. This was before he was appointed to the head of the FBI. He said if he got the job on day one, he's going to come in and fire everybody and turn the FBI headquarters into a museum. Now, one of the happy instances we've had in the past week or so is he was up against reality. Welcome to reality. Because one of the things that he had been saying was that there's this right wing white group. I forget their name, but they wear khakis, they wear a white mask over their face, and a khaki hat and blue shirts. They wear blue. They're all dressed alike. They look alike, and they're anonymous because they're wearing these, and they're very right wing. And Cash was saying through his podcast, through his declarations, that this was in fact the FBI pretending to be a right wing group, but that they were false flag. Well, now that he's in charge of the FBI and he's checked, um, he knows that's not true. And to even make it worse, because he used to claim when he first got the job, and they'd run around, they didn't show up, then this proved that he was right about them being FBI um, undercover people. But since then, the group has shown up, the right wing group, and so that theory's down the tubes. So he can't make that claim anymore.
So now, what's the word about Donald Trump is going to be receiving brief-like from briefs from Fox News?
Well, I mean, half of Fox News is in his cabinet or under his employment now. So what's the difference? Are you surprised by that?
No, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I will only be I would only be surprised by Donald Trump doing something of some decency.
Don't
But
hold your breath on that, buddy.
yeah, so that would surprise me, is that he would be conduct himself as a person with character and conscience and courage. But I won't even take a deep breath on it.
Yeah,
But that would surprise me.
right,
But
right.
I guess what is surprising me is how um, the Democrats can't seem to um, they can't seem to get a footing as to what to do here to push back against what is going on. And
Well,
even
they're trying things. They're trying,
well,
and
the things
they
that I think that that were effective is, and the things that I think that they should be doing is they should be taking these full details rather than just going to these Republican districts. They should be taking the information to the Republican districts and telling them these are the policies that your representatives are working to put forth and to pass that is antithetical uh, to the constituents. I mean, that's what they should be doing. They should be constantly going to these red districts, showing them exactly what the Republican representatives are doing, which are
yeah,
going to be damaging and negatively impacting those districts.
right. Well, when they will be doing that, I'm pretty sure that the Democrats will be doing just that in a couple more weeks when these tariffs start really showing up at the stores, the Targets and the Walmart and other stores,
Well,
and
they're
people,
already showing up because I know my construction bills have soared.
yeah, right,
Material cost is just
right, right.
soaring.
Yeah, see, but I haven't been out to buy any construction stuff. But at some point, I'm going to get a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk or some eggs or some groceries in general.
Yeah,
And I'm going to
yeah.
start noticing and feeling that, because I shop all the time. I go to as a general rule, I go to the grocery store every other day because I like to. I do $100 or less of groceries, but I get the stuff that I'm going to need for the next couple of days, or stuff that I'll just need to have in the pantry. I know the prices. That's the point I'm making. I know the prices of groceries, and I've noticed when they change, and I'm also noticing that my general grocery bill is getting higher and higher as just on the things that are ringing up because I
Mhm.
pretty much buy the same things from one week to the next over time.
Right, right.
And I've gotten and I have money. I'm not worried about where the next meal is coming from or anything like that. But I go to the grocery store and I get pissed off at the prices that I have to pay. Not because I can't pay them or it's a strain to pay them, but just because I knew what they used to be not that long ago.
And that they shouldn't be. Now, there's, you know, a, a bit of this, in my judgment, is that these companies are, some of these companies are taking advantage of this.
Yeah, some
And
are right.
obviously, Trump is sanctioning them to um, to gouge the public.
Well, the tariffs are a power play for Trump in that
Right.
there's always been tariffs, and in some instances, tariffs are necessary. For example, we have tariffs on steel because Japan and China were helping the steel companies in their countries by subsidizing them The government would give them money so they could lower their prices,
Hmm.
selling to the rest of the world, and it gave them an advantage.
Yeah, but
So,
but typically tariffs are imposed by Congress. Typically,
right,
they're imposed
legally they're supposed to be. Yeah, the
by
Constitution
Congress,
says
right?
they impose. Uh, the president gets a, I forget the time period. It's 120 days.
Well, he has a
Uh,
limited. He has a limited
right.
usage of tariffs,
Exactly.
not
Exactly.
just a this broad sweeping whenever he feels like or whatever he wants to do that he's
Right.
doing. A judge basically ruled against that last week, and they appealed it, and I believe that temporarily halted that ruling.
Yeah. 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 But it will come to pass. It will come to pass because you can't run. It, this is why Trump likes tariffs, because it gives him unusual power. Let's say, okay, you're a landlord. I'm Trump. What I do is I do a tariff and say for all rents paid in the United States, landlords uh, are going to be charged. Well, tenants have a 50% tariff on them. So your
Hmm.
apartment that was renting for $1,000 now is a month is 1,500 now because of the tariff.
Right, because I got to pay the
And you got to
tax.
pay the tariff, right? Exactly, for it. Okay, but then you, Mark Wallace, go in to see Trump and say, "Man, this is killing my business, or I'm not making any profits. This is terrible for me." And Trump looks at his list of who was naughty or nice, and he sees that you just gave him about $1 million worth of his meme coins, his bitcoins. And so he say, "Okay, Mark, I'll make your business an exception, or make your company an exception." And so we have corruption going on, and we got a power play going on because Trump gets to pick and choose the winners and the losers, depending on what they've done for him lately. And the rest of the people are quaking and shaking in their boots, worried that Trump will penalize them for some reason and actually raise the tariffs more. He has this individual power right now.
Yeah, you mean like the um, $1 million that Betsy Fargo made to a donation to attend a fundraising dinner at Mar-a-Lago, that she was able to get her son, who was a Social Security tax cheat, who used millions of dollars in
Yeah,
Social Security taxes that he collected from employees and did not pay to the federal government.
yeah.
And just because he paid most of them back doesn't, that
Right.
doesn't take away the crime. That's
Well,
just
no,
your restitution.
yeah, no. In fact, it would be like if I caught you walking down the street at midnight one night and stuck a gun to your head and said, "Your money or your life." So you gave me your money, but then the cops, the cops catch me and they arrest me and they say, "You took this money from Mark." Then I said, "Oh, I'll give it back." I didn't mean to take it. I thought I was joking when I stuck the gun to his head. And they say, "Okay, you gave him his money back. No problem here. Let's keep on moving." I mean, that's the equivalent of what's happened with that situation.
Well, yeah. Well, there's no question about that. Um, But you would think that here it is. He is giving. These are people. Well, it seems that maybe what he is doing is that white collar crime is not a thing of priority. So if you
Right.
committed
No,
a white collar crime,
he's to the point almost where he makes white collar crime not a crime. If it's if it's some business type of dealings, then there are no rules, no laws. He's fired some of the inspectors that check on that stuff. I mean, it's just incredible what he's doing.
yeah. Well, there was a report that came out, news report or something that came out that talked about gasoline prices. Anytime the Republicans are in office, right?
Yeah,
Uh, that and we all know that presidents don't make a determination. They don't determine the price of gas, right?
right,
That's done by the Saudis and APAC based on
right,
their manipulation of
right,
oil distribution and
right,
or production. So if they
right,
decide that they're going to, uh, cut production by 1 million barrels a day just so that they can manipulate the cost of the rack of gas,
right,
they will do it. Now they'll do
right,
it to try to influence um, a campaign or certainly an election by manipulating that. But gas prices under Trump, not because of Trump, but certainly under Trump, necessarily, have gone up. When Donald Trump went into office, gas prices had gone down about, they're down about 40 cents.
yeah,
They're down about 40 cents over what it was this time last year, but not during the Trump administration. That happened before his administration. But now they come out and say that gas prices are the lowest that they have been in.
well, he lies about everything.
Right.
I mean, he lies. He makes up numbers. He lies. So, my general rule to Trump is, if his lips or fingertips are moving, he's lying.
Right. Well, very much so. Very much
Yeah.
so. Um, so, um, so we're only 4 months into this man's administration, to a
Right. A
4-year
little over
administration.
100 days now. Yeah.
So, what what could he do? Because I expect that he is going to do something, seriously outlandish,
Yeah.
seriously, grossly. I think we haven't.
Right.
This is just the tip of the iceberg. I think that he is going to do something that should, I don't know if it would, but it should make the hairs on every Supreme Court justice stand up, and every Republican, to the point to where they say that that this is enough. Now, do I believe they're going to impeach him? I have no.
Well,
No.
if the Democrats win, which they're going to do, when the Democrats win the House back next year.
Are you're confident that the Democrats are going to win the House back?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. And so they can impeach him again. But he's been impeached twice, and the
Isn't that
Senate.
going to be a waste of time?
Well, depends on what you're after.
But I think that that's why the Democrats lose. I think that that's why the Democrats lose um, on a national level, and I think that that's why the Democrats lose on a local level, because the Democrats are just completely out of touch and seemingly can't get their footing, when it should be that somebody has given them a gimme. Uh,
Yeah.
this should be pretty easy for the Democrats, but I think the Democrats um, have kind of lost touch, not kind of, but have lost touch with, the average working person, and they support things that hurt the average working person.
What things have they supported that hurt the average working person? Do you think?
Um, well, I guess I shouldn't say that on a national level,
Yeah.
uh, but I would certainly say that more on a local level. But
Yeah.
let me see. Um,
Well, you got some special difficult Democrats here in Chicago. You got to
well,
factor
yeah,
that in. But
yeah.
no, this is the problem, I think, is that the Democrats have a failure to communicate to the working class and the poor.
Yes.
For example, they're talking about,
Well, they
um,
don't even talk to the poor.
yeah, that's true. They're talking about oligarchs. Now, 4 years ago, did you know what an oligarch was? Oh, it was an
Um,
oligarch on your mind?
no,
Is an
no,
oligarch on your mind right now?
no.
Right.
Oligarch is not on my mind right now.
Exactly. The Democrats, instead of talking about oligarchs, which are very super rich people in power, they ought to
Correct.
just say the fat cats. And everybody knows what a fat cat is.
After the break, we
And they
will
don't
turn
like
to the
it.
law firms that cut deals with Trump.
Hmm.
They're now facing backlash.
Yeah, a TV came on.
Right.
They should use regular everyday conversations, and instead of talking about freedom as a concept, they should talk about what freedoms are at risk with what Trump's doing now.
Well, they should be
Which of
talking about what freedoms are at risk, but they should also be talking about what Democrats have actually done.
right, and plan to do in the future. Yeah, and plan to do in the future.
When I go through what the Democrats did under the Biden administration,
Right.
when I go through all of that, I don't hear them talking about um, those things where you had record low black unemployment, you had record numbers of black businesses that actually got small business administrating fund, quadrupled the number of black businesses that got funded.
Yeah.
$16.5 billion that went to historically black uh, colleges and universities,
Yeah.
uh, cutting poverty in half for children, more than 5 million children, black families. Um, Poverty was cut through the child tax credit program. I don't hear them going to the public to say, this is what we did.
Yeah.
This is what we did, and this is what they're trying to take away from you to pay
Right.
for a $6 trillion gift to wealthy people.
Yeah.
I don't hear any of that.
Well, and it's, I mean, it also is the choice of words you use. Um, what made Jesse such an impactful speaker during his long and celebrated life is Jesse
Mhm.
put it in words that you understood, you liked. And so I imagine if Jesse were um, at the top of his game right now, he'd say something like, they're going to take it from people who don't need it. I mean, give it to people who don't need money and take it away from you who are trying to pay for these groceries.
Right.
That
Taken from the
got,
poor, giving it to the
yeah,
rich.
exactly. Because Jesse, I remember, I think it was under Reagan that he talked about Reagan being and his policies being a reverse Robin Hood.
Hmm.
Everybody knows what Robin Hood was doing. He was taking
Exactly.
from the rich to give to the poor. And so if you're
Right.
a reverse Robin Hood, you do it just the opposite.
Right.
And that's catchy, and you go, oh, yeah,
Yeah, as much as I admire AOC and
Bernie,
Jasmine Crockett, I
yeah,
think that I'm not saying that they have, but it seems to be what's being projected now is to make them stars. And if becoming a star is okay as long as you are keeping the focus of really why you are there. You
yeah,
use the stardomship in order for you to be able to communicate to a broader audience about what is really happening. But
yeah,
that's not what I am picking up. That's not what I'm seeing happening.
yeah, yeah. I know.
So, you know, well, we got a few minutes left here. I want to talk about a little local, a little local
Okay.
politics here. Um, so, um, which I'm going to talk a lot about in the next hour, is that you asked me about policies that why Democrats are losing on a local level, which is what makes us lose on a national level, right? And so when you have in this
How how
town,
how, how are Democrats losing on the local level?
well, this is I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Here we have in Chicago, most areas that have programs like red light cameras and speed cameras. That's brought in by Democrats.
Yeah.
I'm a Democrat. I'm
Yeah.
a Democrat. I'm going to stay a Democrat because I largely believe in what Democrats, widely um, support and believe in.
Yeah.
However, Democrats have gotten into, in my judgment, into um, the same posture as the Republicans. They want to be with the elite groups, and they are only um, responding to the people who write checks.
Yeah.
That's who they're responding to. That's not the mainstream. That's not the mainstream of society. So if you're only speaking to and responding to those people who write checks, then that means you're completely disconnected from about 80% of the mainstream of society on a local level. And I think that that's happening around the country, where Republicans are starting to dominate that space, not because they are interested in doing anything for mainstream, but they are certainly manipulating it so that they can get mainstream to vote for them so that they can take power. They're trying to
Yeah.
infiltrate politics here in Chicago. They're certainly trying to infiltrate politics in Illinois as a whole. I mean, they haven't had the governorship in uh, what two? No, well, it's only been about 2 terms because
No.
this is
Well, well, we
because
had.
the last governor we had was Bruce Rauner.
Yeah, that's true. Right. Exactly. He was a
Yeah,
Republican.
yeah,
Yeah. He was a
and
one termer.
he was a one termer, and as well he should have been a one termer.
Yeah, he should have been a no termer, but
He
that's
should
a
have been a
different.
no termer.
Yeah.
And again, how Democrats lost that because you had Democrats that were going out talking against their own candidate,
Yeah.
were bringing up, the Harold Washington tape that said, and Bruce Rauner used that and said that Pat Quinn should never be, but you had Democrats who were repeating that same thing.
Yeah.
So, we tend to work against ourselves. And I just don't see the momentum from the Democrats. I'm not so sure that the Democrats are going to take the House. You're sure they are?
Oh yeah,
I hope
yeah,
that you're completely right.
yeah. No, they're going to take it big time.
You think so?
And Trump lost in his first term. During the midterms, he lost 40 congressional seats, or 60. Let me think. I think it was 60. He lost the
No, it was
House
60 seats.
60.
It was 60 seats, I think it was.
Right, exactly. And he's done worse this time than he did the last time. So he will. So two things are gonna bring everybody out. One is all these people being fired in these various federal agencies, the Dodge Musk mess, and the other
Mhm.
thing is the tariffs and the impact it's going to have on prices. So between those two things, I mean, and it's a whole lot of other stuff too, but those two things are going to bring people out and against him. Now the MAGA people
So
may remain.
you're saying that there's going to be a widespread number of Republicans that are going to um, vote Democratic.
Yeah. Well, you don't need to know. A lot of independents who voted for Trump are not going to vote for him. Republicans in the midterms, and
Do you believe that the Latino community is going to revolt against him?
some, I mean, he'll get some votes. You only need a 5-point transfer from one party to the next, and it's a landslide. That's a landslide, losing by 5 points. The thing is, Trump, and this is what they do well, the Republicans, is they lie and they play with words. And so they talk about the mandate that Trump got in the presidential election. He did
A
not get a
mandate,
mandate. It was not a mandate by any stretch of the imagination. He barely won.
right?
He won by 1.9% or something, or 1.3%. So if 5% of the people who voted for him last time, or for the Republicans, voted Republicans, vote against Republicans in this midterm, it's going to be a bloodbath.
Well, you know, I hope that is correct. I hope that is correct, and I hope
Yeah,
that people have developed a real conscience about um, and a real awareness about the importance of making sure that you have people who are in public office who genuinely want to make things a little better for people's lives now and get out of this what I call this purity
yeah,
posture
right, right.
that people have gotten into. They're thinking that everything has to be perfect in order for them to do it. Well, if that's the case, you go to what we have now. That's where you jump to, and the misinformation that people that exist across educational lines. I'm not even going to talk about economics, but
Yeah,
across educational line, there are so many people with um, that are very highly degreed
yeah,
in academics,
uh-huh,
but they are completely uninformed when it comes to the science of politics.
yeah, yeah. Um, Sometime known in some quarters as educated fools. That they're educated
All right.
fools. Yeah,
See, uh, wh- you know that that I typically call things as I see them. I don't really
Yeah,
mince words, and
yeah,
that's that sort of thing.
yeah,
But I'm really making a conscious effort not to, because I don't want for people to miss the point, right?
yeah,
Because even though we are small platforms,
yeah.
and we need to make sure that the people who pay attention to us get the facts. There are people who,
But, yeah. Okay. No, but one of the things, and I think this is one of the reasons that Trump is president today, is that um, black folks didn't show up in the right numbers in the last election. Uh, some of them, I heard some black folks, voters, saying that what was the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats? They were all the same. And of course, they're not all the same.
not even
Uh,
close.
yeah, but but they the people who didn't go out to vote uh, lacked imagination or knowledge, and so they didn't go out to vote.
Well, I'll
Uh,
push back a little bit. I'll push back a little bit on it because,
okay,
you know, 80, what was it? 82% of black
yeah,
men voted for Kamala Harris.
yeah,
93% of,
yeah.
97%
Oh,
of black women
yeah,
voted for Kamala.
yeah. You're talking about voters, not the population.
Right. Well,
Yeah, the population, we don't
yeah,
have it. What I'm saying is not enough of us went to vote. We voted with our feet and stayed home.
yeah.
Okay,
I think it was about,
yeah, and the thing is, what I've noticed, observed as a journalist, is that a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us, only vote when we're mad, and then we come out. When Jane Byrne fired all the black members on the school board, then are you there, Mark? Okay, you're back. I think we lost you.
yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. When Jane Byrne fired uh, the blacks and put white women from the southwest part of town on the school board, black folks got pissed off because the schools were predominantly black, and you got these um, not sensitive to black folks, white women on the school board now deciding how our kids should be educated. And so they went out. I was working at the Chicago Tribune at the time, and Slim Coleman had convinced the county to put up voter registration booths in front of welfare offices where people went to sign up for their welfare check, or voter registration was there. So I was interviewing people, and I was talking to people who had never, black people, who I was on Pershing Road at one of the places. And I was talking to black people who had never registered to vote in their lives, or who hadn't voted in a long time, and they were raging mad. And so they were showing up to vote. They were registering, getting on the vote. I had this one old man. He was in his 70s, never voted before, was not well educated, and he was going to vote for. He was going to vote against Jim Thomas because he didn't know that it was a municipal vote, not a gubernatorial. But he just knew that he's going to go out and vote against somebody white. He was so upset, and I'm sure that's what
well,
he did.
that speaks to what that speaks to the point of getting to 70% of those of the people who don't go vote, right? we
Yeah,
have a base of about 30% of people who are registered voters that actually go vote all the time. But
yeah,
there are 70% of people who don't vote,
right.
that are registered voters. And I have been saying for a while, we need to stop saying these people don't vote or criticizing them, and let's go talk to them and find out what is important to them so
Yeah,
that they feel some ownership to get them into engagement and understanding that they have a level of power.
yeah.
That's what I don't believe that the Democrats are doing.
Well, the thing is, the problem is that none of these politicians have been doing for poor people what they need to be doing. They aren't doing anything for them. They're ignoring them. And
Poor
so,
people represent poor people represent more than 40% of the electorate.
yeah, exactly. But they haven't done anything for them. And so they've
No,
become apathetic. They've,
they're afraid to even
they're not
use the term
stupid.
poor.
Huh?
They're
Huh?
even afraid to use the term poor.
Yeah, I know, because that's not what's happened. Being Reagan waged a war on poverty, not for poverty,
Yes, on the
and
poor.
and the poor have lost, and they've given up. That's basically what's happened. So somebody, you have Reverend
William Barber.
Reverend Barber. Barber has, is doing a great job at trying to draw attention to the poor and everything. But he's
Mhm.
almost single-handedly doing that. Nobody else is doing that. One of the mistakes, and she did not make nearly as many mistakes as people are trying to assign to her now. But one of the mistakes Kamala made was she never said poor. She never mentioned the word poor. It
Never
was all
mentioned the
middle
word.
class, right? Where she should have been fighting for the poor and the middle class. She could have been fighting against the fat cats and let it go with that. And if everybody else, I'm going to make sure, but then tick off what under her presidency, if she becomes president, what you'll be getting if you're poor or if you're middle class. This is what my government is going to do for you.
Well, and she could have gone out and said, well, that's what our administration did. These are
Yeah,
the things that our administration
yeah,
did to help the poor.
right. Yeah,
She
that's true.
never referred to any of that.
Yeah,
Now, I'm not a political strategist. I am just one who believes that you deal with things because you're dealing with human beings, and human beings are not stupid people.
yeah,
They can deal with the truth,
right.
and they just tell them the truth. She
Yeah,
could have gone out to say, "This is what our administration did, and this is what my administration will continue to do." This idea in politics that you have to separate yourself, even though you are connected, but now you have to separate yourself as a candidate from the president of the United States as Democrats is the dumbest thing that they could have done. They certainly didn't take lesson from Al Gore. That's what sunk Al Gore,
yeah,
is that he tried to be independent of a president that had a 63% approval rating,
yeah.
but he
Right.
wanted to go out and be his own man.
No, he was Gore was being pious and all. He's upset about his president getting ahead in the White House, and so he wanted to disassociate him. So come on,
Well, 67% of the population said, you know what?
yeah,
Most of us out here are engaged in some type of sexual activity. So most of the country identify with that. Okay, big deal. So what? All right, he
right,
cheated on his wife.
Right, right,
I mean,
right.
there were no wars. There was no war being launched at the time that was
Yeah,
going on.
yeah. No, the
Not
country was doing all
listen.
right.
Nobody is sanctioning it. I'm just simply saying that you have to keep things in context.
Right. And that's part of what we are trying to do here. And hopefully as the weeks go by, we'll get better and better at it. So I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Okay.
Okay. I
All
appreciate
right.
it. All right,
Okay.
folks. That's
All right.
Monroe Anderson for our Monroe Monday. We'll talk to him next time. He'll be back with us in 2 weeks. Thanks, Monroe.
All right. You take care.
All right. All right, folks. Listen, I said to you, some of the things uh, I'm a Democrat, and I think that there's part of a communication problem to a broader sector of the public that the Democrats need to learn to communicate. They need to learn to communicate what they actually did and how those policies will be benefiting a broad sector of people, which they will on many respects, because policies don't happen overnight. It takes a few years for those policies to actually to spread to where they're having real impact. So policies are not about today. Policies are about the future. That's the way that policies work. That's the way that government actually works. And then it's going to take 10 or 15 years of those policies really going into effect, where you really start to see the benefit of those policies, or the reverse of that. But you have to understand how the political science works. Um, but I think that one of the things that I see is a huge mistake is that how you try to separate yourself from the team that you have been on. It just doesn't make sense to me. It is one that is succeeding the other, and things that we did good, we're going to continue to do those things good to strengthen those policies that are in place that will become real benefits for a broader sector of the population, rather than saying, well, I'm my own person. There is nobody that's their own person, no matter who they are. That there are other people that are working in tandem with them to achieve a certain objective. That's what it is. No person is an island unto themselves, despite the way that it may appear in the media. Somebody's got to be in charge, yes, but there are other people who are participating in moving that forward, whatever it may be, be it good or bad, right or wrong. There are multiple people who are participating in it. So I think that having that approach and taking what some people have gotten into, their whole sanctimonious puritist ideology, is counterproductive. It's counterproductive, and then it creates in cases where you end up with something that you really don't want to end up with. And I think that you see the stories where there are people who are saying that this is not what I thought it was going to be, and this is what it has turned out to be. So, but as we were talking about before, I still think that it is a missed opportunity to not focus on talking to people who are not engaged in the process, who were once engaged in the process, rather than criticizing those people, going talking to them. Last week we had a meeting, and there were two people who have become a part of the meeting who did not vote, and they explained why they did not vote. So, and what I said that we were going to do is we were going to go and talk with people. We're going to reach out to people who felt like, you know, they were not being heard or they were not being responded. We're going to reach out to those people and certainly hear them and bring them in, and hopefully that they feel that, and they certainly can get some level of understanding from those who actually understand the process. Because again, we can't take a Puritan approach to it. What there has to be is a collective approach. If we don't like the way things are being done by a particular administration or certain representatives, you put yourself in a position with enough capital. And when I mean capital, I mean enough voters that have the wherewithal that could penetrate one or two or three or four seats or offices. When you have presented that and you've demonstrated that, guess what happens? The other people who are also in those representative seats will pay attention to it, because if in fact that happened to those one, two, or three, or four people, they know that it can happen to them, because there is a movement that is afoot that is bringing itself together to say, hey, these are certain things that we want and we want to see happening. And if those things are not happening by the people who are there, then what we have to do is replace them with somebody else. And when you have the power to remove and the power to replace, guess what? You have the power to do exactly what is being happening, whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, at the national level. That's what real influence is. But you have to organize it to be able to force people to do things that they may not particularly want to do, but will have to do if they want to maintain themselves in their positions. That simply means that we're just making them do what the people want rather than what somebody else's agenda that doesn't include the people. That's the bottom line. It's very fundamental. There's no rocket science to it. It is very fundamental. If you organize yourselves together to where you have the power to do that, then you will have the influence to even cause people in public office before you even get to an election to then hear from you and make decisions. But it's not going to happen when people are operating in silos. When we're operating in silos, it makes it much more difficult to get things done. So yeah. So I want you all to think about that. And as we continue to work to organize, you can do both. And you can look at what issues and agenda items are important. You can organize at the same time. They both are necessary. Looking at issues, because you got to continue to work on them. You got to continue to chip away at them. And you got to continue to nag and nudge and prod and figure out where you can find people to work with, like the squatters bill that we just recently got passed. The squatters bill, in its original language, did not have a very fundamental, simple step in it that we had a conversation with LaShawn Ford, and LaShawn Ford took that language and had it added to the bill. And the language is that if a person breaks into your home, because that's what it is, it's breaking, it's a criminal trespass, which is breaking and entering. If a person breaks into your property and you are not there for whatever the reason is, they break in your property, change the locks on your property, you come back to your property and they say and show some phony documents to say, well, you know, I bought this property or I leased this property. And before, the police would say, well, this was a civil matter and you have to go to court to get people who broke into your property, criminally broke into your property, that you have to go to a civil court action now to get those people out of the property. Well, that law now has been changed. Why? Because now if you have a property and somebody breaks into your property and moves into your property, you no longer have to go to civil court to have those people removed. As long as you can prove that you are the rightful owner of the property. And it takes 2 minutes, 2 minutes to be able to prove that you are the rightful owner of your property. If it is in Cook County, in any county, every municipality or every county has a recorder of deeds. Every county has a recorder of deeds. You can go to the recorder of deeds and you're able to pull up your recorded deed that was recorded at the county through a title agency, that you are the rightful owner. That is your title to your property. And you're able to show that to a police officer or somebody that is there, or a marshal that is at your property, that this is the registered document, not the bogus document that they have, because the bogus document that they have can't even be recorded. They couldn't even get it recorded. So they did not have that language in the bill. They got the language put into the bill, and now if somebody violates your property, breaks into your property, all you have to be able to do is to determine that, show that, or prove that right there with the police, and the police can then remove those people from your property and or arrest them, but they can remove them from your property. It was just by making sure that the right language was in the bill, but you had to have, you know, people who are that you were able to work with. Now, there are people that will not work with on certain items, but if you apply enough pressure to those groups, you could get them to go in a different direction. It's really again, it's fundamental. It's not about, you know, how much one knows, or, you know, how highly intelligent people are. We obviously know that based on things that we are experiencing now, but it is about whether or not you have the force, the numbers of people that you can get things done. That's basically what it is. Now, what I wanted to talk about is, and I said that I was going to talk about this, wanted to show you what these numbers are. Now, we have been analyzing, right? We've been analyzing over the past year these numbers with the city of Chicago. Now, one of the things that I said that Democrats were supporting, that they are on a local level where they are just sort of out of context is that they support things like red light cameras and speed cameras, right? With all of the data that is showing from their own data that is showing that these are not providing the kinds of safety benefits that they like to purport that they are, right? So here it is, where um, we have been analyzing the numbers and doing the FOIAs that we have done over the last 6 months. We have FOIA'd the operations manual. There is one that we're actually in court with now because the city has refused to release that operations manual, saying that there is some proprietary concerns there, which is a bogus argument, but we're in court. And, that's the same thing that Rahm tried to do with the Laquan McDonald tape. But eventually, when it came down to it, the courts ordered them to release the tape. It's public information. There's nothing, no national security secrets in our local municipality, and certainly in an operations manual for speed cameras. So we are trying a case that is actually getting a lot of attention. There's going to be some reports done about it. So, but in doing the FOIAs, what we found, let's see if I have that document. I think I have that document. What we found, and I want to bring it up. Let's see if I can. And the more we dig, the more we found. So we found, got a report that was provided by the Keystone Compliance Group, which is the group. It is a radar sensor calibration verification certificate. They are responsible for testing all of the equipment in the city of Chicago. And in their own report, their report found that this is what it says: the frequency measurements performed and recorded within the report demonstrates that, and it talks about the equipment. It goes on to say, give the model of the equipment and the radar, that the radar has an accuracy of less than or equal to 0.62 miles in the range of 6.21 miles per hour to 62.14 mile an hour. So, and when we spoke to the representative at Keystone, what they said was that the radar that detects you, so if it detects you at doing one speed, say if you're doing 36, say if it records you at doing 36, you're not actually doing 36, you're actually doing 35.38 miles per hour, because it starts at 6 miles an hour. So with that variance that we also looked at, then if that is the case, then all of those tickets, theoretically, all of those tickets where they have recorded people at going 36 miles an hour or 26 miles an hour or 11 mile per hour, all of those tickets should be theoretically refunded. Well, we are pushing that argument, and we are going to see if in fact there is a cause of action there. In any case, it demonstrates that the equipment is not accurate. Now, the state legislature, now we are the only city, let me go back, we're the only city in the country now that has speed cameras that has a threshold that is as low as Chicago's. None of the other cities, there are 153 cities that have speed cameras. I'm not talking about red light cameras, but speed cameras. And there is no other city that gives a violation that is less than 11 miles an hour. And in California, we found that in California, the way that California does their enforcement, if you're going to have it, now they actually go after the reckless driver in the way that they enforce their let me see if I can find it here. Okay, so here's the way that California have their speed safety system. They've just started a pilot program in California. They passed the bill allowing for the use of automated speed cameras as a pilot program in 6 California counties: Los Angeles, Glendale, Long Beach, San Francisco, San Jose, and Oakland. So again, you know, they like to use this in rising traffic fatality, but this is how they're doing it. So they're going to impose a fine of $100 for going 16, not 10, 16 to 25 miles per hour over the speed limit, $200 for going 26 miles per hour over the speed limit, and a $500 fine for anyone going 100 miles per hour over the speed limit. Now, drivers traveling 11 to 15 miles per hour will receive a warning. So if you're going 11 to 15 miles an hour, you will receive a warning for the first event and a $50 fine for the second event, the second offense. Individuals who make less than 250% of the poverty level will have their fines reduced by 50% or 80% if they are indigent. So the way that California is going after this, they're actually going after the person who is the reckless driver. Now, we have a problem with reckless drivers. People who are driving 6 to 10 miles over the speed limit are not the problem here in Chicago. They are not the problem. Now, the people who you're out on the road with and you see that are dashing around cars, driving at excessive rates, those are your problem drivers. And that's who the city ought to be going after, not going after the average person who is just trying to get from point A to point B. We talked to a gentleman last week who is going to be a part of a story that we're doing, who, because they're doing construction on 87th Street, he has to come down 83rd Street. And he got 4 tickets, 2 in the same day, going to work and coming home from work. 36 mile an hour tickets in a park zone. So when we checked, or the reporters checked, that this man said that he can't remember the last time that he had ever gotten a speeding ticket. So in Chicago, they are not interested. They are not interested, even in the way that they talk about it. Now they talk about, because every time we come up with something where the city is exposed, they come up with a different way of talking about the use of the cameras. So now the language that they're using now, which we even have on tape, the language that they're using now is saying that every time that they put a camera into operation, that they notice that there is an immediate decrease in traffic crashes. Now, even though there They don't have any data that shows that there are traffic crashes at the locations where the cameras are. So we have another analysis that showed that we looked at 10 years of operation of the 162 cameras. That's what they have now. 162 cameras, 10 years of the crash data within 1/8 of a mile of each safety zone, 1/8 of a mile. What we found is that the crash data, this is just around the safety zone. This is not talking about, citywide, because citywide, the crash rates are skyrocketed anyway. But within 1/8 of a mile of the 162 cameras, and then the 16 new locations that are going live this week, where they're putting the camera, 10 years of analysis of crash data in those locations. You know what the difference is? Virtually no difference. 10 years of operation of 162 cameras, the crash rate within 1/8 of a mile of each location is at 14.2. 14.1, where the cameras are. The locations, the 16 locations, plus the other locations that have no cameras, over the same 10-year period, the crash rate within 1/8 of a mile of each of those zones, the crash rate is 14.2. Virtually no different. This is all from the city's own data, confirmed by the report. So the cameras are not there for that purpose. So then now the city is saying, well, it is they've always said that it is another tool, and they're now calling these areas of concern. That's the language that they're using now, the areas of concern, meaning that they're saying that if there are residents or people that are complaining about a certain area where people are quote unquote speeding, so they call that an area of concern. So we looked at the placement of the cameras that they're putting into place now, which is another thing we're going to look at, as well as they're using a different type of camera, that they are affixing these cameras to already light poles, to street lamp poles. They're not completely independent at all like the other cameras, the other 162. These cameras are a little small, black. You can't even really see them, and they have them high up on the lamp, the lamp poles, street lamp poles on the streets. And in some of these areas where they're putting the cameras, like the one that is off of 84th and Lafayette by the school over on, I forget the name of the school that's there, but this is going down a street that hardly nobody travels down unless it's somebody who is going to that school. You can't go down to that street to go to, or if you're going to Lowe's or something. It's not that a highly traveled street, but they put a camera there on that street. So there more of this information that's coming out. We're putting all of this together, and we're going to be continuously looking at it to see if, in fact, there is a cause for legal action. But the fact that this information is coming out, there should be an even bigger cause for the community to say that this system should stop. Now, this is, again, a system that our Democratic representatives pushed and continue to support. Brandon Johnson, who said that he was going to do something about alleviating this system. Those were his words, that he was going to look into, quote unquote, the legality of what it would take to alleviate the system. Yet he did the same thing that Lori did, said he was going to do something and reversed that, and reversed it by even adding 50 new cameras. Well, he may do that, and that may end up being somewhat of a problem for him. And but we shall see. We shall see if that is the case. But we are going to continue diving into this information, getting this information. We have an independent analyst who is looking at all of these, the city's numbers, and putting the numbers out. So just to give you some numbers, I want to bring up a chart for you on some of the numbers that that we did. Let me see if I can pull those numbers up first, and then I want to go through some of those numbers with you. We did kind of an analysis of showing you how many of the tickets. So we did this analysis from 2020 to 2024 to show you how this is really the city's attempt. Well, I shouldn't even say attempt, that they're doing this purely for the purposes of collecting money. Now, remember, the state statute, the state traffic statute, that nobody, not a police officer, nobody can issue a person a ticket from going from 1 to 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. So you have a 5 mile over the speed limit grace period before you can be eligible. That's what the language says. Be eligible for a ticket. So when Rom first brought in the cameras, we were able to get them to start the threshold at 10 miles an hour, even though it was already in the ordinance, that you wouldn't get a ticket until it was at 10 miles an hour. You get a $35 ticket. 11 plus became a $100 ticket. Lori Lightfoot, her administration lowered it to the 6 miles an hour. And of course, they went from getting 1,100 violations a day to 11,000 violations a day. One report said that they were issuing a violation of one ticket every 12 seconds. So, so here is the here are some numbers. So I want to bring this chart up so you all can see this chart here. Okay, so these are some numbers that we did. So from 2020 to 2024, the city issued 2,510,476 6 mile per hour tickets. 6 mile per hour tickets. They issued a total of 1,567,633 tickets at going 7 miles over the speed limit. 544,077 at 8 miles, 764,492 at 9 miles, and 370,733 at 10 mile per hour. And the 11 plus was 521,535 tickets. And then, of course, the others go down. So there were so there were 1,003,667 that were not fined at the 6 miles an hour, 623,506 at 7, 215,278 at 8, and 301,771 at 9, and 175,626 at 10. So what we're saying is, based on the Keystone report, that's the city's own contractor that they've hired to calibrate the system, that there should be, let's see, let me go back to that report. Give you an idea of the numbers that should be refunded based on that information. Let me pull that report up here. Okay, so here, all right. So so those tickets that were within the 0.62 margin of error, which would come into play, there is $89,728,356 that, if in fact this is proven to be correct, which based on their own report, because it's not our report, that should be refunded at exactly 6 miles per hour. So again, if it says record you're doing 6 miles an hour based on the Keystone report, you are actually doing 5.38. So you would have been doing 35.38, not 36. So you would have to go 37 to be within the margin of error and still be going at 36 miles per hour. And then those that were at the 11 mile over, that was 88,305 1,291 that should be refunded. So the total amount was 178,033,647 that should be refunded out of a total going back all the way back to January 2015 to May 19th of 2025. There was $581,346,702 in combined tickets that was owed. Now, 40% of all speed camera tickets, 40% of all of the tickets were $35 tickets. Now, they were fined at $35. We don't know how many of those, we can tell you, but we don't know how many of those actually doubled in fine, because a lot of them doubled in fine on the south and west sides of Chicago because they don't have the discretionary funds that a lot of other people have on the north side of Chicago. They don't just have $3,000 or $4,000 just sitting around in their checking account where, they don't like speed cameras red light camera tickets anymore on the north side than they do on the south side, but the difference is they have the wherewithal to be able to pay for it. So here's what we should be rallying around. We should be forcing Brandon Johnson and the city council. We should be forcing them to stop with these policies that are just predatory policies. And then they should spend more time getting creative so that they can expand a tax base rather than just relying on the same policies or stunts, however you want to call them, right? Relying on the same policies that they need to go to. I mean, here we have them now saying that there's an $800 million shortfall for public transportation. And the scare tactic is, which I'm sure that there's maybe some truth in it, that they're going to have to lay off, scores of numbers of workers. Well, I don't ever think that it is a great thing when you're laying people off, especially when there should be ways that you can, balance budgets and without having to going through the same tactics. I mean, we go through the same tactics, seeming administration after administration, year after year. And so find ways to tax, find ways to fine people, which is nothing, more than just another tax used by a different name. But to stop that sort of thing from going on, there has to be more people who are willing to step up, stand up. Not that you have to always say something. You can say something by showing up that speaks volumes. A number of people showing up, and I'm talking about numbers, scores of people showing up, will speak volumes to people who are in public office. Like the alderman of the 6th Ward thought that he was going to be at least an opportunity he had to be different. I'll put it that way. So, of course, there are a couple of things that he did. And I saw him at an event and he said, oh, well, don't beat me up because the people wanted speed cameras. And I asked him, I said, well, how much time did you sit down with us to understand the real numbers and the real data of speed cameras? He said, none. I said, exactly. I said, why wouldn't you say before you would support something, any of you, but why wouldn't you say, let me at least understand, or let me do a little research and get more information, rather than you just sitting there listening to a pitch that comes from the guy Christian Morthy, who is now there, that you guys brought in from Wisconsin to be the deputy commissioner at the Department of Chicago Department of Transportation. Well, why wouldn't you sit down to get the information? So he says, well, that's fair. That's fair. Well, but you didn't do it. But you voted for something that you don't even have the information of. You don't even know what the data is, but you voted for it thinking that you're doing something that is good. You're doing something that may be good for the budget, but you're not doing something that is good for people, and you're certainly not doing anything that's good for the public. And it may be a backlash. And from what I am hearing, because I now live in the 6th Ward, but what I am hearing from other people that are not very happy with Alderman Will Hall, because he has just become just like the rest of them. They get into office and say that they're going to do something different, but they don't. The only thing that they are different is just they have a different name. So Memorial Day weekend, pretty busy weekend for retailers. 75th Street from Wabash over to Vernon are mostly Black-owned businesses, and it is a pretty busy corridor on the weekends. The alderman decided that because of some complaints about noise late at night, a few residents that live in close proximity to 75th Street complained about people hanging out, playing loud music, late at night after hours. They complain. Okay, fine. What do they do about it? They decided to shut down parking on both sides of the street from 75th and Wabash all the way over to 75th and Vernon, on both sides of the street, not from say 11 o'clock at night till 7 in the morning, but for 24 hours for 4 days, from Friday through Tuesday. They did a parking ban. So I went actually to pick up my dry cleaning and went into the cleaners, and there happened to be 3 business owners from that block that were talking to each other, really upset about this parking ban because it's really cutting into their operations. And they asked me, what could be done about it? I was like, I don't know. I said, did you talk to the alderman? Did the alderman give you all a notice that they were going to be doing this? Nope. They never even sent out a notice to the business owners that this is what they were planning to do, or they didn't even go and talk to the business owners. So I said, wow, let's check and see if we could find out what's going on. So this was Friday. I called Will Hall's office, left 2 messages, never got a return of phone call. I'm a resident of the 6th Ward, never got a return of phone call. I called 311 to see if I can find out. And they said, well, you got to talk to the alderman's office. So I called and to speak with the district commander of the 3rd District, Commander Derek Branch. Commander Branch called me later on that day. I explained to him what the concern was about the parking ban. And he said to me, his own words, well, it didn't make any sense to have a 24-hour ban for 4 days. He said that he was not going to have his district to enforce the ban, and that he was going to talk to the 6th District because they both share parts of 75th Street. So he's going to talk to Commander Tate, who is the commander over the 6th District, and they both agreed that they were not going to enforce the ban. I was told that there was one person that had gotten a ticket early on. I don't know, but Commander Branch decided that we're not going to be enforcing the ban, certainly not during the daytime. It made no sense. So when I text Will Hall, so he sends me a text with a notice that the business owners should have gotten, but he didn't provide that notice to the business owners. And I'm going to just show you the arrogance that they think that by being so flippant that it made sense. But this is what he said in his text message. Will Hall. In fact, I was surprised that he even responded to the text, because he usually doesn't. Let me just find it real quick here. Oh, okay. So I sent a text message to him. I said, please advise as to the parking restrictions on 75th Street. So he sends me this notice that says, tow zone enforcement in effect on 75th Street this Memorial Day weekend. Dear neighbors. He didn't even say business operators. He said, dear neighbors, as a part of our Memorial Day safety plan, tow zone enforcement will be in effect on 75th Street throughout the weekend. Please be mindful of all posted signs to avoid towing and help keep our streets clear of emergency vehicles, clear for emergency vehicles and community safety. I fully support Commander Branch of the 3rd District and Commander Tate of the 6th District in their ongoing efforts to keep our neighborhoods safe during the holiday weekend and beyond. So I asked any of the business owners if they gotten that notice. None of them had ever seen that notice. And talking to Commander Branch said that they were responding to what the alderman was requesting. So in the way that he crafted that little note is that he wanted to make it seem though it wasn't him that was calling for this, but it was the alderman who was ultimately responsible. So my point is that these are the kind of things that they do. The other thing that they did during Black History Month, they had this thing that they called Buy Black, or supporting buying Black businesses on 75th Street. Now you got the businesses on 75th Street that have been there for years. Some of them have been there for better than 40 years. So what does the alderman do? So he sets up on the furthest part of the street east, which there are fewer businesses, period. There are more vacant commercial spaces down that way. Rather than them promoting people coming and shopping with the businesses, they bring in booths and give people booths for imported other businesses, Black-owned businesses, giving them a free booth so people can support the businesses on the streets, rather than supporting the businesses that are already there. It would seem to me that if you're going to have Buy Black or Shop Black on 75th, how about supporting the businesses on 75th? There were many people who were upset about that because the businesses didn't benefit. There were a couple of businesses that benefited. Of course, Brown Sugar benefited and Lem's Barbecue, but those two places are pretty busy as it is. But the other businesses didn't really benefit because the people were down on the other end. So, and I asked then, were you all in a meeting with the alderman in the planning of this? None of the businesses were in a planning meeting. The alderman didn't come and have a planning meeting with the businesses of that corridor. My point is this: these aldermen make these decisions in a vacuum without even talking to the people in their area, just having a conversation or getting some feedback from the people in the community, which could help them make better decisions. When you have more people who are engaged in the conversation and you're listening to different ideas or giving you different concerns, that you at least have that information that you can weigh to make the best decision. But the point is, that's how they all operate. That's how they all operate. And Will Hall is operating that way too. I don't know if he's just wants to be a rubber stamp for the mayor, be on the mayor's good side. I don't know. I think that in being a representative, if you want to be supportive of the mayor, one of the best things to do is to make sure that you give the mayor good information, and it's not always agreeing with what the mayor's ideas may be. So anyway, that's going to do it for me this week. Make sure you all join us for our weekly 10 by 10 to win meeting. We're going to be having a meeting at the Woodson Library coming up on June 12th. I'll tell you more about that at the meeting this week. So if you haven't, text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385 so that you can get the text alert and receive the Zoom meeting link. We're talking more about that this Thursday night at 6:30. Thank you all for tuning in to intellectualradio.com on this Monday. Tonight was Monroe Monday. Thank you, intellectualradio.com, for giving us this time. We'll see you all next week. Same time, same place. Have a great week. Good night.